千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Now, without further ado, let's get started with Tao Te Ching 28. The title of this chapter is Eternal Virtue. This is an expression that is repeated several times in the chapter itself. The first character, the one that you see to the left, is eternal. The external eternal nature of the Tao means it has always existed and it will always exist. It was never born and it will never die. It is constant. It does not change. It is infinite, and therefore it cannot increase or decrease. One cannot add to it or subtract from it. The second character, the one in the middle, is virtue. The same character that is in the middle of the title, Tao Te Ching. Virtue is an internal goodness that manifests externally. For example, the virtue of compassion manifests as acts of kindness. The virtue of patience manifests as the willingness to listen to others. The virtue of humility manifests as an openness to learn from anyone. And the virtue of integrity manifests as the adherence to the truth. Together, these two characters,常德, represents the Tao-given potential for good in all sentient beings, including you and me. And this follows the thought process from the previous chapter where Lao Tzu talks about the sages not giving up on people. And the reason they would not give up is because they could see this potential in everyone. So the eternal virtue in the heart is an essential part of you. It can lie dormant only because we are often engaging or immersed or trapped in the mundane aspects of the world. Aspects like consumerism, consumption, and contention. They all have an effect to obscure the truth. When we resonate with the Tao, we can awaken this potential. And in this chapter, Lao Tzu will tell us how we can hold on to and not stray from this essence that makes us ultimately human. Here is the chapter itself. 道德经 28. Know the masculine, hold to the feminine, be the watercourse of the world. Being the watercourse of the world, the eternal virtue does not depart. Return to the state of the infant. Know the white, hold to the black, be the standard of the world. Being the standard of the world, the eternal virtue does not deviate. Return to the state of the boundless. Know the honor, hold to the humility. Be the valley of the world. Being the valley of the world, the eternal virtue shall be sufficient. Return to the state of plain wood. Plain wood splits, then becomes tools. The sages utilize them and then become leaders. Thus, the greater whole is undivided. Next, we will take a look at the sectional analysis as usual. Starting from the top down, we will look for repeating patterns in the ancient text to help us identify the structure of this chapter. This chapter does have multiple intricate patterns of repetition. So let us take a closer look. We can see an obvious repeating pattern in lines 1, 6, and 11. Let me mark them so they're easier to see. Notice how they all begin with the exact same two characters, but that's not all. We can also see just from these 3 lines that I point to, the 4th and 5th characters are also the same for all of them. So let me highlight these characters. With this highlighting, you can see more easily what the 3 lines have in common. And in the English translation, they all follow the same format. All 3 lines are in the format of know the X, hold to the Y. And it is the X and Y that vary from lines 1, 6, and 11. And if we were to look below them, we can see how each one of them is followed by 2 lines that are the same, except for one character, the last character. Looking at the translation for those lines that follow, they have the same format as well. And they all follow the format of be the something of the world. So let me go ahead and circle the text, the characters that repeat themselves, so they're easier to see. And lastly, I want to point out that there's even a little bit more of the repetition. You have, if you take a look at lines 4, 9, and 14, you're going to be able to see that they begin with the same two characters as well. Let me point them out, like so. And as I mentioned before we started, this chapter has multiple intricate patterns of repetition. And below 4, 9, and 14, we can see repetitive patterns in lines 5, 10, and 15. The first three characters of all those lines are the same as well. Let me point those out. So this gives us more than enough information to identify the sections. We can tell that from lines 1 to 6, they belong to one section before they begin to repeat the pattern. And the line that you see now in the slide makes that clear, because when we go to line 6, it goes back to the pattern similar to line 1. In the same way, there is also a dividing line between 10 and 11. Once we go beyond 10, 11 starts the pattern all over again. So each one of these spans 5 lines. So the last iteration ends at line 15, leaving lines 16 to 19 as the concluding section. Sections 1, 2, and 3 all talk about the same concept of the eternal virtue, but from different angles. This gives us a pretty good idea on how to understand this chapter, one section at a time. So we will begin with the first line. Know the masculine, hold to the feminine. So let's start with the masculine. It is the yang principle. In the yin and yang symbol, it represents the part in the complementary duality that is the external as opposed to the internal, the visible as opposed to the unseen, the dynamic as opposed to the static. This principle is related to action, movement, exploration, and advancing forward. It is goal-oriented. It is positive energy, like the sun. It's the power of aspiration, inspiration to act, motivation, initiative. So what about the other side? The female, the feminine, the yin principle. The yin principle is internal, unseen, and tranquil. It is related to inaction, stillness, security, and holding back. And I want to draw everyone's attention to the sub-bullet because it is meant to be the contrasting parallel to the sub-bullet below the masculine. So inaction is the complement of action. Stillness is the complement of movement. Security is the complement of exploration. Holding back is the complement of advancing forward. So the opening line establishes the basic framework of Tao cultivation. Know the yang, but hold to the yin. Both are crucial. Both should be present, and both should be in balance. So, in our typical understanding of the yin and yang symbol, they are usually called out as male and female. But I want to be very clear, and I want to ask everyone to advance your understanding to the next level, and that is to realize that whether you are male or female, both yin and yang exist within you. And you have to master both energies in life and also master both in interacting with other people. So it isn't just that men focus on yang and women focus on yin. Nothing could be further from the truth. We must encompass both yin and yang, every single one of us. So continuing with the first line, I want to highlight applications. So in life situations, knowing yang is about knowing initiative, the taking of initiative, knowing about being decisive and proactive. Holding yin is having flexibility, being able to yield when appropriate. In personal communication with others, knowing yang is about saying what is on your mind, expressing your perspective, articulating your position, whereas holding to the yin is being receptive, understanding of alternative views. So if you look at these two and think about what happens on a daily basis, perhaps you are in your social circle among your friends. The yang, knowing the yang, is to know how to suggest ideas on where to go and what to do to your friends. Holding to the yin is to remain open to other ideas and not dogmatically insisting on your own. And holding to the yin is also integrating other ideas with your own. If your idea is to go to a restaurant and someone else is suggesting to catch a movie, it is entirely within the realm of possibility that the two can be integrated. So in a similar way, yang is just about having that plan in mind for group activities, but then holding to the yin is to remain flexible so you can be spontaneous. You can have that ability to adjust to changes of the moment. And most importantly, that flexibility and spontaneity is what provides a sense of fun, the surprise, the unexpected. So these are absolutely essential to life overall. So in this chapter, In this first section, Lao Tzu talks about line 2, when you know the masculine and hold to the feminine, you can be the watercourse of the world. So we should talk about the watercourse. It's a recurring concept in the Tao, an important concept. It is the place where water flows together. It's the place where one stream joins another stream to form a larger stream. So when you know the masculine, hold to the feminine, you become this place. You take on the characteristics of this place, that is the joining of the flows of water. So line 1 and line 2 should be considered together. And I want to invite everyone to keep that mental image in mind. Mountain streams join in a larger river flowing through the valley. Smaller streams become larger streams. Larger streams eventually will join the river in the center of the valley. So in this recurring image in the Tao, in this chapter, water specifically is used as a metaphor for human interactions. So the watercourse is therefore the nexus of social activities. So let's pause for a moment and think about what Lao Tzu is really telling us. Lao Tzu is saying that something happens naturally when you integrate complementary energies. Yang means you know how to be socially outgoing, you know how to be positive, energetic, motivating. But then holding to the yin means that you are considerate to other people, you're accommodating and thoughtful. What is the natural result of combining these? Well, should not be a surprise, but people gravitate to you. You naturally attract good people to you, which in our language here is that you naturally become the watercourse. So when we look at reality, we know when we look at the physical world, we observe and see that the place where streams of water join together, that place, that watercourse, it has to be physically lower than the incoming streams that are flowing into it. Intuitively, that makes sense. This aspect of the physical world is often used in Tao teachings as a metaphor to describe a humble mindset. When you have that, you naturally become really good with all kinds of people. Being able to get along with everyone, that just means you are in tune with the Tao of humanity. And when I say getting along with everyone, I mean regardless of who they are, regardless of age, from the very young to the old, to the elderly. A person that we're describing here, the watercourse, will be naturally approachable, will not be distant or aloof because of the humble nature, but still upbeat, cheerful, and someone who will beckon to you, come on, let's do this. That's the kind of person I'm talking about. Next, we have line 3, being the watercourse of the world. This line has the exact same characters in Chinese, in ancient Chinese, as the previous line. But then the translation is slightly different. The first word, the first English word, changes from be to being. And that is because it's a slightly different contextual meaning. And the thought process is as follows. 1. You integrate the yin and yang principles and become the watercourse. That's the first part. It goes back to line 2. And the second step is, as the watercourse receiving from many streams, you find that the eternal virtue is with you, leading to a pure state of being. And this is looking ahead to the 2 lines below, like this. So, in other words, we can put this into real life terms. Somebody who is sociable and dynamic, that's knowing the yang, but also open-minded and a good listener, that's holding to the yin, will naturally attract people to him or her. That sunny and positive outlook, but also at the same time courteous and attentive without being over the top or overbearing in any way. It is not difficult for us to understand this idea because we ourselves are drawn to people like that. This is a clear indication from Lao Tzu that Tao cultivation is not an isolated or solitary activity. You can tell just from here that good interactions with people, helping, supporting them, being there for them being there for you, all of that plays a crucial role in your quest for the Tao. This takes us to line 4. The eternal virtue does not depart. Eternal virtue, this speaks to the virtues you practice, becoming your virtuous nature. It is the difference between what you do and the person you become. Let me explain. It is more than just possessing virtue, because what you have, you can possibly lose. What you do, you can undo or choose to not do. But the person you become will not go back to the person you used to be. The person you are today is not the same person you were last year. So, in that perspective, your virtues cannot depart from you when they become you. So here is the thinking of the sages. They start with the Tao. They know the Tao is eternal. The Tao within you is your essence. Your Tao reflects the great Tao, and it too is eternal. Therefore, your essence is eternal. Your true nature is eternal. All of this springs from the fact that the Tao itself is eternal and constant. Therefore, the virtues that you incorporate into your nature, that is your virtuous nature, that too becomes an eternal part of you. Therefore, the eternal virtue does not depart. So you can see going from the eternal Tao to the eternal virtue, there is a chain of logical sequence from one to the next. This is all talking about how when you learn something and gain understanding, gain mastery, your mind is changed irrevocably. When you see a truth about human nature, or a truth about the world, or a truth about reality, it is literally impossible for you to unsee it. Once you have seen it, it changes you, and you cannot change back. So, here's an easy way to understand. When you practice virtues, you end up becoming one with the virtue. You're not just someone with the virtue, you are a virtuous person. You are not just someone with patience, you are a patient person. And you know a truly patient person cannot be impatient because that is not who he or she is. Sometimes we hear people talk about how they have lost their patience. They may say, that's it, I've lost my patience. That is the opposite scenario. That is not a truly patient person. That is someone who had patience, but decided to not have it anymore. That is the difference. Another example. When you practice humility and it becomes a part of you, you are no longer someone with humility. You are a humble person. We do oftentimes see people forget about being humble. If you are a truly humble person, there's no forgetting about being humble. There's no being arrogant. It's just not who you are. So in a similar way, when you practice the virtue of honor until you master it completely, then you are not just someone with honor, you are an honorable person. Here it's the same. We can definitely see the possibility of somebody losing honor or forgetting honor and act in a way that is without honor or dishonorable. A truly honorable person cannot do that without becoming a different person. And that's the point. And it's just the same with dignity. You are not just someone with dignity, you become a dignified person. You don't lose your dignity. It isn't something that you have and then not have. So if you are truly dignified, you don't have to worry about that. And lastly, let's talk about compassion. When you practice the virtue of kindness, it becomes a part of you. You become a kind person. This is somebody for whom kindness is not conditional. Like, for instance, we see how people can be kind with some, but not others. Their kindness is dependent on who they are being kind to. But then on the flip side of the coin, a truly kind person is kind to everyone unconditionally and with no strings attached. Just looking at this list, I think it is clear that for many of us, including myself, we're working on becoming a better person and not just have the better attributes or the virtues. We're still working on it. line 5. Return to the state of the infant. This is important. The state of the infant refers to you at your purest, most essential, and most primal self. To return to the state means reconnecting with the inner child. So think about this. We were all infants once upon a time. Now, in all likelihood, we probably have no recollection whatsoever from our own infancy. But we have definitely all encountered babies and young children in daily living. So we can readily see what they are like, and we can guess that what they're like is what we were like when we were that age. When you hold an infant, you may see a smile or even a laugh with a joy that is the purest thing in the world. And for many of us, maybe if this experience is not that long ago, you know the smile or the laugh, the joy, that is not due to any kind of material gain. The baby isn't happy because the baby made some money. No. The baby is happy due to perhaps just seeing you, or just being alive, just being there. Like I said, it is pure. Likewise, when you see a young child at play, you can easily observe complete, absolute absorption. The child may not be running around all that much, but you know his or her imagination is soaring, going places no one else can follow. When you look at that, think about when was the last time you or I was so wrapped up in an activity that we found ourselves in a state of effortless flow. When was the last time we experienced this timeless bliss the way a child can, and the way you and I used to experience long ago? So this is reconnecting with the core, the origin of your being. It is regaining the playfulness, the joy, and the sense of wonder that you once had. From observing infants and children, we can see the aspects in the states that Lao Tzu is talking about. To the infants, there's no separation, no division. There's no us versus them. There's no being tribal, conflicting, being wary of others, because you are directly connected to a sense of oneness. There can be no contention. There is no need for comparison. It matters not at all that someone has more, leading to envy, or someone else has less, leading to arrogance. None of that exists in the infant. There's no judgment, there's no criticism. The focus of the infant is inward, not outward. Outward focus is what leads to interference and impositions on other people. Likewise, with an infant, there's no distractions of desires or greed. It is the ultimate state of contentment. The concept of the infant is a recurring theme in Tao cultivation and also in the Tao Te Ching that underlines the importance of the idea. Throughout the Tao Te Ching, we see references. In Tao Te Ching 10, this is the first mention of this concept. Line 3 and line 4. They say, in concentrating the energy and reaching relaxation, can one be like an infant? This is where Lao Tzu points to the complete relaxation of the infant as a way to describe the freedom, feeling so free, that comes from a complete lack of attachments. Think about it. So much of our tension and stress comes from worries, anxieties, and fears that, well, they just seem to be part of daily living. If we can let go of even just a fraction of the stress factors that weigh us down, we can breathe a little easier. We can catch a glimpse of the worry-free bliss enjoyed by the infants. And as I mentioned, it's the same bliss we have all experienced when we first came into this world. Then there's Tao Te Ching chapter 20, line 11 and 12. This is in the middle of a long chapter where Lao Tzu says, I alone am quiet and uninvolved, like an infant not yet smiling. So Lao Tzu is talking about an even more primal state, the ultimate primal state of a human being, because an infant starts smiling around 6 to 8 weeks of age as a response to something like a parent's voice, a parent's face or smile. Before this, they may show reflex smiles, which are involuntary and can happen randomly. By the mark of 2 months, smiling to others is a common milestone that signals developing social and emotional awareness in the baby. So, by describing the infants before the milestone, this is talking about the ultimate purity, the ability to let go of absolutely all worldly concerns, let go so completely that one reverts back to the originating point of human nature. A powerful concept. Lastly, I want to showcase Tao Te Ching 55. Those who hold an abundance of virtue are similar to newborn infants. Poisonous insects do not sting them, wild beasts do not claw them. So, in this mention of the concept, Lao Tzu addresses the state of the infant as a maximally virtuous state. It echoes the fundamental concept that the truest virtues are also the most natural virtues. In that state, one is naturally protected against the toxic negativities of the material world, like the infants being protected by the parents. the toxic negativities of the material world in this chapter is represented by poisonous insects and wild beasts. From here, we can see the ultimate virtue of the Tao is not only the right way to live, but also a powerful form of spiritual strength and protection. And I want to, in closing of this slide, mention that this concept is not unique to the Tao. All wisdom traditions of the world express the same idea in their own ways since ancient times. In the Bible, Matthew 18 begins with disciples asking Jesus, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" So Jesus places a child among them and answers, "Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." This draws a clear connection between returning to the state of the infant and being spiritually powerful and spiritually virtuous. Let's go to line 6. Line 6 says, "Know the white, hold to the black." So this is corresponding to the line that we had in line 1 that said, "Know the male, hold to the female." Let's break this down, starting with the symbology of the white. The white denotes brightness that is highly visible and gets noticed. So this is related to the high profile, publicity, public attention. This is similar to our expression when we say somebody has a bright future. This can therefore be connected to when things are going smoothly in life. What about the black? The black is the opposite. The dim light, the muted, the unnoticed. This is related to hidden depths, being unknown, downplayed, and ignored. So, as opposed to being well known, as opposed to having that high profile, this is quite the opposite. What Lao Tzu says here is that Tao cultivators know about high visibility, but hold to the low profile. Therefore, this concept is connected to the Tao of humility. And this is because, as cultivators, we do not crave external attention or validation. And therefore, we have no need for the spotlight. So continuing with this concept, what does it mean to know the white? To know the white is to understand the yang principle, the highly visible. And this is similar to when we talked about knowing the male. In a similar way, holding to the black is to wield the yin principle, just like holding to the female. This is the unseen aspects. So the white aspect of life, the yang, is the easily seen. We're all in this world. So we know we have to actively be engaged with it. After all, that is what being alive enables us to do. And as a result of activity, we become perceived and known by others. And then the other side, the black, is not obvious, not something that showcases itself or is in the spotlight. It means being introspective, thoughtful, to contemplate. And this has the powerful impact that you can have the introspection, the contemplation, the thoughtfulness be the basis for the actions that you decide to take. This is not being, quote unquote, out there, not drawing attention. This is someone who is quite content to just fade into the background, not be noticed. So there is an important point here. First, let me talk about the balance. Excessive emphasis on either one over the other brings a lack of balance. Too much yang means too much exposure. You're overexposed. Too much yin means you are isolated, unknown, lonely, and alone. Now, when I present it like this, I know that this can lead to a misconception that you should balance the yin and yang, but I want to be careful here. But then Lao Tzu will be the one to tell us that yin and yang are not 50-50. So an even split would not be the right balance. That is why Lao Tzu says we should know the white. In other words, in our thoughts, but hold to the black. In other words, through actions. The right balance makes you become your optimal self, which means you can set a standard for others, but it is important to know the importance of the black over the white. It is an idea that Lao Tzu has expressed in several different ways. Elsewhere in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu doesn't so much talk about the white versus the black, but he talks about the visible versus the unseen, the highly visible, the arrogant versus the ones that are remaining in the depths. So this is highly visible versus unnoticed. In Tao Te Ching 4, we see these two lines. Dims the glare, mixes the dusts. To dim the glare in the Tao means there is no need to dazzle others with the glare of brilliance. So the sages understand the light of great truth, know the white, but prefers to not be assertive or aggressive about it, hold to the black. And this allows the sages to be fully present and effective in the world without causing friction or drawing undue attention. It allows the sages to be receptive and adaptable These same characters, dim the glare, mixes the dust, they appear again in Tao Te Ching chapter 56, further emphasizing their importance. Next, we have Tao Te Ching chapter 8. In line 3 and line 4, it says, Lao Tzu says, it stays in places that people dislike. Therefore, it is similar to the Tao. This is a reference to water. Water flows to the lowest point, no matter where it happens to be. Even though it is beneficial and indispensable to life in so many ways. And providing that benefit is knowing the white. Water remains soft, pliant, automatically flowing to and seeking the lowest profile. And that is holding the black. Next, we have Tao Te Ching 20. In Tao Te Ching 20, Lao Tzu writes, ordinary people are bright. I alone am muddled. Ordinary people are scrutinizing. I alone am obtuse. This is where Lao Tzu compares himself to most people. He's pointing out that they exhibit their brightness in being shrewd, calculating, and scrutinizing everything. Lao Tzu understands their calculations, know the white, but prefers to not show off or draw attention to himself, hold to the black. That means people may misunderstand him being reserved as being muddled or obtuse. And that misunderstanding will be perfectly fine with him. It doesn't matter. So all of this makes it clear that when Lao Tzu writes, know the white, hold to the black, he's talking about something very specific, that you can understand how to be brilliant and dazzling, but it is better to not blind people with that brilliance, with that glare. Line 7. Be the standard of the world. So what we're saying here is that understanding the visible, but mastering the unseen, that is the Tao. Here, when I say that is the Tao, I'm referring to the Tao as the best way to live, the optimal strategy, the most effective approach. So to understand this particular line or this section, an excellent way is through the mental image of a sharp blade sheathed in a scabbard. The blade is polished. The blade is sharp and effective. It can be compared to a sharp mind that is capable of cutting through problems. So the brightness of the sharp blade, that's knowing the white. Nevertheless, it should be held in its protective sheath the scabbard, so you do not accidentally cut yourself and others. That's holding to the black, or the yin principle. So this metaphor, this mental imagery, shows the importance of using both. And the same is true to other aspects of life. This is like when we say the best way to be secure is security through strength. Developing your internal power, not because you want to use it against other people, but because you want to use it to protect yourself. So my commentary here is that when we apply this to life, it corresponds to keeping a tremendous capability under control, perfect control. It's a concept that I think we already understand, but we may not be fully aware that we know it. Think about the idea behind the peaceful warrior. What is the peaceful warrior? As a warrior, he or she knows how to fight. That's knowing the yang, but chooses to be peaceful. That's holding to the yin. Or think about another familiar concept, the unknown Samaritan. Somebody who provided assistance to another person in need, but then decides to fade into the woodwork and not stick around for capturing credits. The unknown Samaritan is somebody who knows when somebody else is in trouble, needs help, provides the assistance. That's knowing the yang, but has no need for fame and therefore chooses to remain anonymous. That's holding to the yin. So like I said, we already understand this concept. Perhaps we're not fully aware of that understanding. And when you incorporate this in all aspects of life, this is what allows you to excel effortlessly. Your excellence makes you the standard or the example. We talked about the unknown Samaritan, stories about this helpful stranger who remains unknown, gets passed around because it is an example or a standard for other people to follow. It is an excellence that makes that person the standard. It's a kind of quiet excellence that doesn't need to shout or advertise itself. From our observations, we can see it may not be all that typical in the world, because more often than not, we see people flaunt and highlight themselves instead, even if they do not have a lot of substance. So in our language here, we can say they do not know the white. Their blade is not polished, sharpened, it is blunt and ineffective. And they do not hold to the black. Their blade is always out of the scabbard. They're always waving it around in this aggressive show to flaunt, to make sure that everyone knows that they have the blade, despite the fact that it is dull. That is what we see more often, and Lao Tzu says, if you know the white and hold to the black, then you can be the standard of the world. And now we move on to line 8. Just like before, this line has the exact same characters as the previous line. The contextual meaning of this line is also following a similar line of reasoning. So this is just changing out watercourse and swapping in standard. The flow of the logic is the same. First, you will incorporate the visible and the unseen to become the standard. Number 2, as the standard, you cannot deviate from your path. And the result is that the eternal virtue remains constant. You become unlimited. So I want to talk about setting an example or a standard. I want to talk about how it can be very useful for people. It's an inspiration for us to get to a place where we can actually be the standard or set an example. It can benefit the people all around us because theories, concepts, and ideas can only go so far. When you are able to be the example or standard, you let people see a physical manifestation of the theories, concepts, or idea. They appreciate having someone embody the Tao so they can have a ready-made example to emulate. It is important because a lot of people focus too much on appearance and not enough on substance. This is very common in society. We have the saying, all sizzle and no steak, and all talk and no action. Precisely because of that, people are way too obsessed with appearance, giving substance not enough attention. Of course, there's always going to be a few people at the other extreme that they focus so much on substance at the cost of poor or non-existent presentation. Such people never become truly aware of what they have to offer. So they never get the chance to show it. It's missed opportunities. So either way, people need to look to you as the example or standard to figure out what to do, how to act, how to live. Now go to line 9. The eternal virtue does not deviate. So it does not deviate because the Tao in you is one and the same as the eternal Tao. It holds true. It does not vary. So the internal reflects the external. They are one. When I talk about the internal, I mean the Tao within, the Tao in you. The external, I'm talking about the great Tao that is everywhere, inside and outside of everything. And everything includes you as well. So they are one and the same. When you are the standard or example, you embody the constant nature of the Tao. And you underline the fact that the Tao remains unchanging in ancient times as today. Now, the other side of it is also true. If you are able to stay the course, hold to the Tao without straying from the path, then you would naturally become a standard or an example for others to emulate. Line 10, return to the state of the boundless. So the last two characters, 无极, that is the ultimate state of infinity. No limits, no boundaries. It is the state of existence before existence. So in the Tao cosmology, before anything existed at all, it's an infinite expanse. 无极. When something manifests out of that infinite nothingness, it is 太极. So because of that, 无极 gives rise to and is connected to the infant. That is your original state of maximal potentiality. It is also connected to 朴, the plain wood, also representing the maximal potentiality and the principle of simplicity. So the infant that we were just talking about, the inner child you reconnect with, that happens naturally when you integrate the yang principle while holding to the yin principle. It's a path that takes you to the great truth within. And therefore, the states of 无极, meaning you become unlimited as an individual. It is the reason why Lao Tzu says you get to that point, you get to that state of being, there is nothing you cannot do. And that's just another way to talk about your unlimited nature. So 无极 itself, the infinite void, it is synonymous with the Tao as the ultimate source of everything. 无极 is the origin from which we all emerge. And it is the home to which we all return at the end of a lifetime. Returning to 无极 is synonymous with spiritual liberation. Usually, among Chinese-speaking Tao cultivators, they will say 归空, returning to emptiness. It's a synonymous expression. The meaning is the same. So I want to point out that there's a connection between the reality of life and death and spiritual awakening, spiritual enlightenment. So when we understand, this connection means when we understand the reality of life and death, that leads to spiritual awakening and enlightenment. The other direction of the arrow is just as important. It says, when we become spiritually awakened and enlightened, we understand the reality of life and death. This is a huge topic for us to get into, and we are getting close to the top of the hour. So we have to jump to the summary for today. It is a very good thing that we were able to cover the first two parts about knowing the male, holding to the female, knowing the white, holding to the black. and that will be incorporated in the summary for today. So let's review. Knowing the yang, but holding to the yin. This is the key concept where everything is derived in this chapter. We start out with the male and female representing the yang and yin respectively. It just means knowing the active and dynamic, but hold to the serene. Understand the importance of active engagement, but then remain calm in the midst of turbulence. That's kind of the nature of our world. Everything tends to be chaotic and turbulent, especially in recent years. So this combination of the yin and yang principles, it is a synergistic fusion, which just means that the sum total is far greater than when you add up the parts. It is what takes you back to the primal state of your true nature. We represented that first as the infant, and now with the term 无极. The second part of this is know the highly visible, expressed as the white. Hold to the power of the unseen, expressed as black. So understand the effect of presentation, perception, and image. I think in this world, we know that if we don't present the proper presentation, we negatively affect the first impression other people have. It becomes more difficult for us to get anywhere. Second, remain with the depth of your expertise and resources. That's holding to the black. Balancing these two, taking care of both, knowing the white, holding to the black. This will keep your virtuous nature constant. And this returns to the state of limitless potentiality. That is just another way to talk about 无极. So that is the summary for our discussion today. And I want to end with a reiteration about sharing the Tao. For easy access to Tao resources, visit my website, dereklin.com. There, you can click on links and see everything listed, such as Taoism.net, information about the Tao and this meeting, our Facebook community, a place to discuss the Tao with fellow seekers, our YouTube channel, recordings of all our previous meetings, my Amazon author page, books and audiobooks for further exploration. You can go directly to this page at dereklin.com/links. When you see the benefits of the Tao in your life, share your experience through comments in Facebook and share these resources with friends who may also benefit. If you find my books or audiobooks helpful, please post your reviews on Amazon to guide others to the Tao. If you have connections to prisoners interested in the Tao, contact me through Derek Lin Books on Facebook, and I will send my books to them free of charge. This is the path that I am on, so I can say sharing the Tao has transformed my life in incredible ways. I would like to invite you to come along. Let us travel together on the path, in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.